This one's for Heiki. Who was your greatest rival? And your greatest race against that rival?
Yes, in the 250 class I have in a big fighting with the Russian boy in Moise. And Kavinov also. They are very good that time, and of course they have. And 500 class is, of course, Rocky Costa is very, very strong guy and very good guy. We have many fighting, many races fighting very hard.
When you raced Roger, did you feel that you could race him very close but very fair? I mean, he was a fair rider, like he never tried to do anything.
No. It's very well driver. We have never problem. No problem. Never.
Who was the worst?
Especially in the after race, we are very good. No, it's fine, but I'm racing. I have no any driver, bad driver. So 100% always correct.
He was the guy they did
If you are leading, very much hard for other boys, then nobody can contact you.
We've just about got to wrap it up, so we'll just take probably 2 more questions. Okay, King's. King's got a question.
Yeah, but Broc, a few years ago we did a story on you, and I spoke to you about a few things, and one of the things was your relationship with Hannah while you were both on the Yamaha team. It didn't seem as though you were really close, but, was anybody close to Hannah at that time, or was he just completely off by himself?
For me it was, when you're a young rider, what did you want to be when you're a young rider? For me, I wanted to get a factory contract. That was you strive, you did all your amateur racing, you wanted to become a factory, you wanted to have a factory contract, you wanted to get paid to race motorcycles, you wanted to have a factory motorcycle, and that was what my goal was. So I remember when Yamaha started talking to me, and in my rookie year, they asked me if I would be interested in riding on their team next year, and of course it was a dream come true. So I remember after signing the contract thinking, this is going to be great, you're going to go to this team, and you're going to have, everybody's going to kind of give you that, hey, welcome on the team, and that kind of an attitude. It was anything but that from one, Bob particularly. It was, he had his own kind of his team, and then like Mike Bell and other riders that I had teammates with, we all were, it was, oh yeah, this is great being on the same team, go practice together, ride together, do that. I don't know that I ever, maybe we tested one time or two together, but I never really rode with Bob and everything, but he never, he just never, obviously he didn't want to be my friend, so, or be a, that, so I just, you realize that, it's, so at that point, so, that's kind of how the relationship went, and I think, even the Let Broc Buy story was, that thing got so blown out of proportion, and I'm not even sure half of what it was even published was true. I don't, I got paid this amount of money, I got paid that, $100,000, that's bullshit. You know what? Our championship bonus was $5,000, and if you won one race, a national race, your championship, your bonus for that one race was $300. So don't tell me somebody paid you $100,000. I was the highest paid guy at the time to sign a rookie contract, and I got paid $1,000 a month. Factory Honda riders were getting paid $400 or $600 a month. So nobody was writing $100,000 checks for pulling over or whatever it is. And the other part, for me is the whole time frame. That race series was only 6 races long. In the very first race we both had mechanical failures. We had these Yamaha bikes that we rode were air-cooled bikes, and the European bikes were water-cooled bikes. And they decided to not run the water-cooled bikes in America because of what's called the claiming rule, where the competitor can actually purchase your bike. And so we raced an air-cooled bike, and the early bikes that we tested, they weren't very good. We were having trouble with them, and they needed a new piston design and some long stuff. So bottom line is, when we got to the first race, we hadn't ridden these bikes more than maybe 15 minutes in any given stretch of time. And during the first race, our bikes stopped shifting, both Bob's and mine, and we ended up getting stuck down into, they would only shift down, but they wouldn't shift up. And so we got stuck in first gear at the end of halfway through the moto, and there was no way to continue on a 125 in first gear. So we both pulled in, and they decided to just change and put our spare motors in. And the same thing happened in the second moto. And I remember that when I went to shift up, it wouldn't shift up, and when I went to shift down, it did. And I got down to third, and I went to shift back up to fourth, and it wouldn't do it, so I just stopped touching the shifter. And Bob ended up, I don't know where he was on the track when his bike had the problem, but he got stuck in first gear again and pulled in. So when we started a race, Bob had double DNF. I managed to hang on to a third place finish with bike in third gear only. And then when we pulled the bikes apart, we saw that there was a bearing that had just fallen out of the water pump where the old leftover water pump used to be and went down into shifting. So the same thing happened to our bikes, both motos on both engines. So we went to the next race, and it was kind of the same situation. We get to the first 3 rounds of the 6-round series, and we had sand races, and Bob was a fantastic sand rider, and Danny Laporte was a fantastic sand rider. And both of those guys, you know, Bob won both motos, and it was a pretty good, you know, good thing for him. And I managed 1 second place, and I don't remember what the other moto was. But when we got to the third race, another sand ride, I ended up winning the second moto. And so it was like I was starting to go from a skinny little 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid, and starting like, okay, now I can. I was never expected to race with Danny, and I was never expected to race with Bob. I was just kind of Bob's supporting teammate. And so for me, all of a sudden I won a moto. It's like, okay, my confidence came up. And then the next race was in Texas. It was round 4, and I won both motos. So now I've got 3 straight moto wins, and I'm feeling pretty confident. And in the championship points are starting to get a little bit closer. And then in the final, next to last race, I think Bob was the winner, but I was second. And then going into the final race of the series, I was only 10 points out of the championship lead, and Daniel Laporte was leading myself, and Bob was 16 or 17 points behind. So it really came down to the last moto of the first moto of the last day, and that moto decided the whole thing. Had I finished in second place, I would have never had a chance to have the opportunity for the let cross by sign needed to happen. And, you know, to go out and win that race, I won the first moto. And at that point, we at Yamaha kind of figured out Bob doesn't really have a chance anymore. Broc's the only one with a chance. So at that point, you know, we had to work together. And, you know, and going into that race, like at that point, I had won 4 of the last 6 motos. So I was certainly starting to mature, starting to get faster, and I felt on the track that I was matching anybody's speed at that point. So, of course, I'm happy to be in that position, but there's never at the beginning of the season did Yamaha or myself ever think that I was going to be, you know, being able to be in that position. So, you know, of course, it was a frustrating thing for Bob, but after the race, there was never even an opportunity for me to go up and say, hey, thank you for what you did, because within seconds, he's, you know, saying crap about me. It's in the press is coming over trying to stir stuff up, and then it was like, you know, thank you, but I mean, I would do the same thing for him. I would have for sure done the same thing for him, and it was just an odd, and that was the start of an odd relationship. And so to answer the question, it's like it never really went from there any further. I mean, it's just you know. So, I mean, other than I can still to this day say thank you for what you did, but on the other side of the coin, I mean, for myself, I was happy and proud that I even was in a position to do it. I mean, to be in the position to win the championship. So.
Okay. We've got one more question here, just a quick one, and this will be the last question. These guys have to go. So.
This question is for Broc, and it's about your transition from racing in the US to going to Europe, and with do you have difficulties doing that whole going from your home and then riding in Europe and going through all the different countries and going, well, what are they doing over here?
Actually, I didn't have a lot of problems, to be honest with you. From the time I was a child, I was exposed to, you know, motocross and the the great champions like the ones sitting next to me, and seeing the same thing a lot of people saw in the magazines. And I always had, that extra special place in my heart kind of for the Grand Prix and the, if you've ever been to the Motocross of Nations, if you've ever been to the Grand Prix, you see kind of the extra, there's just more pageantry, there's more special, you know, different countries and rivals, and I know Jeff knows from doing IFD and stuff. It's just, it's like the next step. It's kind of like the Olympus in my mind. And when I went to Europe, I always kind of had a dream of racing in Europe, and it didn't work out that I was able to go do it on a Yamaha. So I was going to retire, and then the guys at KTM had asked me if I'd be interested. Their major goal was more to develop a motorcycle that would be accepted in the U.S. market as much as it was to win races. And so, you know, having many years of experience in the bikes, it was kind of a nice fit. And I thought, you know what, this gives me an opportunity to go to Europe and kind of fulfill the dream. It was a little bit like Brad Lackey. I mean, Brad could have won many American championships, but Brad Lackey went to Europe because that was what is in his heart. And he finally accomplished his goal, and it was fantastic for him, you know, to see somebody that's worked 10 years racing Grand Prix and finally win a world championship. So for me, it was kind of that. It was that, and then, you know, at that point, I knew I was done. I was only going to do it for 1 year, and I think I had kind of enough, and I needed a little break from the sport. And once I did that for 4 or 5 years, I was able to, luckily enough, come back, and I truly have a dream job at Dunlop. It's a great company to work for, and my job is, I couldn't ask for more.
Okay, thank you very much, Dale. On behalf of Ken and VMX Magazine, it's been absolutely amazing to listen to you guys, and we really appreciate it. Thank you very much.